Hello and welcome back to the Smoke Room. We'll be continuing where we left off in William's route. If you recall, this is the start of William's investigation, where you actually get the notebook proper. Um, and he's investigating what's, been happening and the recent death of, I think it's Huxley Greene. Pretty sure it was. In the previous episode, he went around City Hall and the Stag to try to see if he can get any information about what's going on and whatnot. And that's where he also met Kane, who you might see again. um, Also, I believe this was the previous video had the build where you actually get to see Sam proper, like his actual sprite. So that was like pretty cool, like back then. And you had the notebook, which was a feature that wasn't available when I was recording it for Patreon. I mean, the Patreon build, not like because I have a Patreon or anything like that. But so I actually didn't get to see it when I was recording it. When the Patreon build of this version came out, the notebook wasn't working either. So it's like, well, I guess I'll never get to use it. So hopefully, now that it's public, they kind of fix that issue. Hopefully, because it does have like some little sketches and some neat little things here and there, which hopefully, we all get to see. Anywho, so without further ado, let us continue William's route. Will? Sam! What are you doing here right now? Just catching up on old business. Fair enough. I'm the one who lives here though, so stop looking at me like I'm suspicious. I'm not suspicious. At least, not of you. That was my kid back there. Seems prickly. Hardly surprising, suppose. You see the missus too? Ex-missus, but yes. More to the point, whenever they're close by, there's no telling who else is. Let's get back to the station. Quickly. Hold on to your horses. Todd's tired face pokes past the slip of the opening in the door. His fur is a bit mussed, and his shirt is extra wrinkled. You alright, Todd? Well, sir, yes, sir. Nothing a bit of hot soup and a few laps around the town won't fix. Running at this hour? Wouldn't he trip over his tail? Seems like you're trying to go awfully quick. A good night's sleep keeps me spry, sir. I need to check in with my folks soon anyway. You're leaving like Clifford isn't there behind you. Oh. Well, that's because he isn't. What do you mean he isn't? He said he was ready to leave. You were supposed to be watching him. It was for his own safety. Well, he wasn't under arrest now, was he? No, but that's not the point. Well, I ran out of things to distract him with, and I didn't feel good about making him stay. But I really ought to get some rest, Sheriff. These shorter naps ain't cutting it. The otter hops down the stoop and waddles across the street with a distracted look on his face. Todd, wait. Sir? Before you go, I need to ask. Whereabouts did you find Huxley's body? He scratches the back of his head as if trying to remember. In a ditch on the side of the road, coming back that direction from Peyton. About a 15 minutes walk east from the station. Close enough to plenty of houses with an icebox then. Was anybody near the body? Sir, no, sir. The road was clear. He must have been dumped. By a wagon? Something like that. Well, I was glad to be of help. Well, you could also let me know. But he was already gone. William exhales. He looked distracted. It comes and goes in waves. But he's been clumsier with just about everything the last few days. What do you think the sudden exit was about? No doubt something irritating. Bound to find out soon, though. I always do. The inside of the prison is a lot less dusty than when we left it, which would explain the filth on Todd's shirt. Will's eyebrows lift as he examines the floor, resting his paw on his hips. Then he walks past the door to his office, stops, then walks backwards, cocking his head as he turns it, pursing his lips as he squints. Oh, for the love of... I walk in through the door to see what he's fussing about. The scattered papers look cleaner and stacked neatly. His office is remarkably clean. The papers are stacked, the stamps are organized, and there aren't any stray sheets of paper lying around. I told Todd not to mess with anything. But ain't everything better organized this way? I already had an organized system. Now, I just won't be able to find anything for days. Great. I see a note of patterned stationery placed on the table. It has a mint scent to it. What else did he leave? There's a fancy lettering in the ink. It says something. Says what? I do so love a desk with shine. And I do so love the scent of pine. For a sheriff of reputable achievements. To address every public grievance. Whilst not buried neath papers supine. Big words. Big ego. Insolent bastard. Should have known better than to leave Todd alone with somebody that pushy. Nice of them to clean up for you, though. 'Cause I ain't doing that. Didn't ask you to. But if complete strangers are organizing my personal documents, then they have more than enough opportunities to steal information. I have to at least check to see if everything's here now. Yeah, all hell's gonna break loose when people find out who's pissing in the watering trough. I pocket my paws and start walking to the direction of the front door. Or maybe where Nick saw you walking back a month ago. I swivel on my heel. You wrote that down? You're lucky I burned it. There's all sorts of information in my notes, Sam. They're not just for anybody to look at. We don't know if they even looked at anything. You're right. We don't know. I'm worried enough about what it is, not what it might be. I'm not asking you to be worried. Just to be prepared for ugly possibilities whenever something like this happens. I think you're on edge. Do you really need to go and drag me back here just to scare me about Cliff looking at your papers? Or did you find something important in the last 3 hours? Found out my ex-wife is working for Mr. Hendricks. I bet that stings, but so what? She showed me a photograph somebody took of her while she's been sleeping. It was her apartment back at the city. Which means it's almost certainly a mobster. I click my tongue. Didn't you think it was mobsters back at the tunnel? I don't know what I heard back there, but a photograph's a photograph. And I don't think she's lying to me. So what? You think Hendricks is responsible for that? Could be. I never talked much with him about my wife. Or anybody for that matter. His lips tighten as he nods. So somebody I'm not close to had to tell him about her. That means he has contacts who can supply him with information that isn't easy to get. The closeness of his contacts is the question. Either he's paying somebody a pretty penny for knowledge, or he's making deals with long-founded partnerships. Any idea which? Certainly the former, since the man is loaded. But as for the latter, I don't know how many bridges his father or his grandfather burned. There's a lot of nasty rumors still dogging them from what I hear around town. Nasty how? The stories I hear go something like this. Over 50 years ago, James's grandfather, James I, hired a Meseta manservant who he had a good social relationship with. Over the course of that partnership, said manservant allegedly murdered over 24 children, meseta, and settlers alike, and only some of the bodies were recovered. The man was lynched by the town before there was a trial. People also tend to say that James was very reluctant about this series of events, leaving the manor and the mine to his son, James II. So why is there so much pressure on Hendrix if it was the servant's fault? Some people say James I was too concerned with his beloved homestead getting associated with the actions of a serial killer, and he was too slow to act. Others say that the killer was James I's lover. But folks around here always try to say that the deviant behavior all leads to the same end, so I don't know how much stock I can put into that version of events. Either way, those events cast a shadow on that family despite James II's success with the co-ownership of the mine, and James I's success with the food industry by the coast. I don't see what his problem would be finding out what he needs if he has money. Well, money can get you a lot of things from people who need money. But when it comes to deals and interactions between families who have had money for generations, well, that's when money only goes so far. If James is responsible for directing Haiti here, then his family might still have some of those old connections. But if he didn't, then somebody else is responsible for what happened to her apartment. And if somebody had the ability to find her up north, then they certainly have the ability to keep tabs on her here. And me too. You think that has something to do with everything that's been going on in Echo? Maybe not everything. But somebody wants to keep me busy. Preoccupied at the very least. Seems like their plan's working. I'm guessing you didn't pick up any leads again. Good news. You're wrong. Oh, yeah? Why, yes indeedy, Sam. I found out Huxley's gun was pawned and then repurchased. So how's that helpful? Because it was bought real close to the days it went into somebody else's hands. His drinking buddy, Reed, didn't know he was missing at the time, so he couldn't have taken the gun to his usual haunts. So he left the house with the gun, or he didn't, and Marcy was around to see what happened to it. She'd at the very least know if somebody broke into her home. So you're going to go back to Marcy's in the morning? Yep. Come with me again. Why? Because you noticed some things that I missed. And I need to bounce ideas off of somebody other than Todd. If Todd's not useful, why don't you just fire him? Because he's good with people. And he's been a deputy longer than I've been a sheriff. Locals wouldn't be happy. He served under the former sheriff. Shouldn't he have been the sheriff after the old guy left? Usually that's how these things go, but that didn't happen. Might be because he was too young. The prior sheriff's leave was sudden, but the city hall sent out a scouting campaign, parading me around town to talk about my experience, then held the election. The rest is history. You came off a lot more strict back then. Because I was. I wasn't used to 6 o'clock meaning 6:15 whenever anybody makes plans around here. But I found that the nature of a place changes you more than you'd like to change it. It breaks you when you're stiff, so you can choose to bend. I'm sorry us Hicks have disgraced you so. I meant no harm by it. Had to bend for the big city too. Hard sometimes to take my mind off how where you're from in the past is just as much a part of who you are where you live now in the present. Is that just a fancy way of saying the past will catch up with you? More like the past is always here. He looks like he wants to say something, but won't allow that for himself. But then, he takes a seat in his chair, sitting on it backwards, while he drapes his arm over the back and holds his wrist. Stay the night again, Sam. You need me to take care of you again already? Just asleep. Might as well, since it would save you the walk in the morning. His leg begins to bounce like he can't sit still. You're still paying, right? What, you think I'm cheap? I pull back the curtains to see if anybody's moving around outside. The street looks pretty dead. Just making sure. He spins in his chair almost like a kid. I'm wounded, Sam. I'll get you a bandage in the morning if I remember. You comfortable sleeping in my bed again? Well, I already done it once. Just making sure. It's no trouble putting together a pallet for you. I said it's fine. He smirks a bit. Did I just see you wag? Coyotes don't wag, Sam. You saw me use my tail to keep balance, yes. Bullshit. William's arm holds me by the waist while I sleep. I can tell he's asleep by the way his chest is rising. Usually I worry about getting too hot, but I often forget how cold it can get until it's dark again. I sit in silence wondering if I'm going to hear those noises again. Scratches inside the walls. I try to listen for them, but there's nothing. That's when I realize how tired I am. Sleep takes me. Fuck. I throw the thin sheet off of me. Willem is sitting by his desk, smoking his pipe as he ignores the beating against the door. That's not Todd again, is it? I can tell it is by the way he knocks on the door. Does he do that every morning? Only when I don't beat him to the lock. Why don't you just give him a key? I told you before that he ought to know where the spare is hidden. I mean, one of those dangly ones on a chain. For his belt? For his belt. Maybe... You know, I stay in bed longer when my temperature's higher. So it's technically your fault he's out there banging. He shakes a tin of instant coffee into his mug and starts downing it before it's completely dissolved. You gonna add some sugar or honey to that? His glance flicks to me, then he tips the mug higher, downing it as fast as possible. The empty mug clatters on the table as he lets it sit. You want any? Nah. The banging gets louder while William yawns into one paw and gestures towards the window with his mug. You get used to it, you know. Let him in already. We dress ourselves and get to the bottom of the stairs. I'm the one who opens up the door. Well, it's about time. Oh, howdy, Sam. Hello. You got here earlier than me, 2 times in a row? I slept here. Now there's a relief. I was about to whoop myself for slacking more than the volunteer. No need for any of that. But I will need you to be in top form today. Can you do that for me, Todd? Sir, yes, sir. Good. We're visiting Marcy Greene again today. I've got a keen suspicion that she's going to know what happened to her husband's gun the day that he went missing. But even if she knows, she might not tell us. That gun is crucial to the progress of our case, because it's connected to the deaths of at least 2 people, the attempt of a life on a 3rd, and injuring a 4th. Well, Marcy's real nice. I'm sure she's gonna help us. She still doesn't know her husband's dead, does she? Not unless she helped to do it. You think little old Marcy would do such a thing? Not really, but we can't really rule anything out too early. She's certainly a suspect, unlikely as it may be. But what would make you suspect such a thing? Clear evidence of domestic abuse for one. I found out from his buddy, Reed, that he was a heavy drinker. I also found out from the madam of the hip that he'd brag about controlling her. Keeping her in line, so to speak. The last time that we were there, it looked to me like she was stuck in place. Like he had made her dependent on him as a part of her routine. Dependent on him for so long that she couldn't live an ordinary life without him. Why would she hurt him if she relied on him? Sometimes desperate people still need an out. Take into account that she flinches when you speak to her. Baggy clothes are good for hiding bruises. I don't know the extent of what he was doing to her, but I have a pretty good idea about what the situation looked like. If he went too far, she could have fought for her life. Sir, with talk like that, you're really making it seem like she did kill him. Except that there's still the matter of the gun, Deputy Bronson. If it didn't go missing with him, why didn't she use it on him? And if she had used it on him, why would she try to throw it away or give it to somebody else? She doesn't strike me as a schemer. So, the gun. I think if we can find out what happened to the gun, we can get a little closer to finding out who was involved in the death of Huxley Greene, as well as who was responsible for the hit on Mr. Tibbets. And she's the only one who might know. So, what are y'all waiting for? You ready to go, Todd? Ready as I'll ever be, I suppose. When we come up upon Marcy's cottage, it's close to the state that it was in a few days ago. Except that there isn't that pastry kind of smell anymore with cinnamon and baked butter. It doesn't smell much like anything. Just a bit of overturned earth and dust. Marcy! My knuckles rap against her door. It's a sheriff. I want to talk to you again. I hear something hobbling around on the opposite side of the door, and then it creaks open. The vacant gaze of Miss Greene stares back at us. You're here again. Yes, Marcy. We need your help again. Have you found him? I can't tell her yet. The investigation is underway. Come on in, then. The state of her house is darker and dingier compared to our last visit. There's so many more dolls. All dirty and dingy, too. I can see clusters of half-filled teacups scattered about the house, some still with fluids in them, catching flies and bugs and specks of grime. Yarn has been tacked to the ceiling like spandrels. I think the idea is that it's supposed to look like the inside of a big top. But the way that the banners move make me think it looks more like the inside of something alive. Thank you for seeing us again, Marcy. Truly. I just want to see him again. My records indicate that Mr. Greene owned a firearm, pawned, and then repurchased within days of his disappearance. This firearm, to be exact. I put the gun on the table and her eyes go blank. He had this the day that he went missing, didn't he? She lifts her thumb and sticks out her finger, mouthing gun noises as she points it at me. He's a good shooter. Rodeo Romeo. Gonna take me away. Rodeo Romeo. Gonna save the day. Rodeo Romeo. Got time to play. What are you singing? She wheezed first and then giggled. Our song. Marcy. Are you dodging my question? She pouted. Yes. And why is that? She leaned away. Bet you think I'm slow, don't you? What? He ain't never coming back, ain't he? Maybe you did kill him. Now, why would you say something like that? 'Cause the dollies don't lie. They always tell the truth. Your dollies aren't alive, Marcy. They can't tell you anything. If they can tell the truth, then why can't you? You're right, Miss Greene. He's not coming back. Todd! I knew. I knew the whole time he ain't coming back. But there's other people out there who need your help. I knew. Ma'am, we just need to talk to you about the gun. She closes her eyes and starts whispering to herself. I knew. Marcy, Could we have permission to search your house and the property? Hmm? I can get permission from somebody else if you tell me no, but I don't want to go through all the trouble. Not like anything matters anymore anyway. I'll take that as a yes. Again, if you remember anything about this gun, or where it was stored, or who your husband was going to visit the last time that you saw him, it could save lives. I knew. She kept repeating the phrase like it's a psalm. The door shuts behind us on our way out of the cottage, and the windows get shuttered. I could hear a soft wailing from the inside. I'm afraid of that woman. She's traumatized, Sam. And now more so because Deputy Bronson couldn't keep his fucking mouth shut for a little while longer. Well, I don't think that you should have lied to her. I thought I explained to you that she's a suspect. Now she's got something to hide, then we'll never get it out of her willingly. So now what do we do? Scout the property for a few hours and wait for her to calm down. Now we just gotta hope that she isn't guilty, and that she'll be in the right mind to cooperate. Until then, we ought to look around. Why don't you and Todd go search the ground surrounding the house while I search the road? What should we be looking for? Trash or wheel marks or scrapes of clothing. You could start with her shed. She probably has more outdoor storage around here, and that's worth checking too. I need some time to myself to think about how we're going about this again. Guess I'm with you then, Mr. Bronson. Looks like I'll get to show you the ropes for a spell. Let's try to meet back in front of the house in a few hours. Hopefully, no more than 2 at most. Will trots off down the dusty road, disappearing as he turns past an outcropping of rocks. So, how are we supposed to go about this again? We can start with a general sweep of the perimeter. Just think about it like it's a nice walk. Ain't there more to it than that? I think it's best to get a general impression before we get bogged down by any details. Just keep your eyes and ears open and enjoy yourself. The Green's property is a lot bigger than I thought it would be, though I suppose it makes sense that they have more room per how far away from downtown they are. It takes us about a 10-minute hike before we see any trace of anything at all down the dirt road. We can see Emma in the distance through a corpse of trees, and there are a few shallow creeks and ditches full of smooth pebbles around. Just how big is the Green property? 50 acres, roughly. That's a huge amount of land for a little cabin to sit on. Up ahead, I see a ramshackle building under a thick pine tree that looks like it might be a tool shed, considering it ain't that big. Think it's locked? I'd reckon so. Mr. Greene always did get touchy about people staying away from his things. Let's just try. We walk past a pot of succulents here and there, next to the squatting ornaments of cast iron imps and gnomes and angels, with all pudgy baby faces. There is a thick padlock over a horseshoe-shaped bar shoved into a very thin, very rickety wood. Take a look at this puppy. He pulls out a pocket knife and pulls out its sides, showing off a set of oddly shaped blade ends. I bet if I can fiddle with this for about half an hour and get the right feel, I just might be able to get us inside. I jiggle the U-shaped bar and it comes clean out of the wood, with the lock falling to the ground. Well, yeah, that was a good idea too. The door creaks as we walk inside the dusty shed. Specks of light splay off the surface of the rusty tools on their racks, and the cobwebs in the corner of the room glimmer. You see anything out of the ordinary? There's a hoe, a shovel, a can of oil, a well-used bin with some pine needles on the bottom, a few cans of paint. Nothing much out of the ordinary. I guess we could put the lock and the door handle back into place. Shouldn't we look a little longer? I guess we could, but I think we've seen everything. Right. But we've been here less than a few minutes. You probably missed something. Sure, but there's still a whole lot of land to cover. Sometimes there ain't a whole lot beneath the surface, you know? I think it depends. Maybe you're not trying as hard as you could because you knew him. Know who exactly? Well, you've known Miss Greene for a while, right? Course I do. My uncle works for the bank, so my family always exchanged gifts with the Greenes. For some reason, I thought your uncle owned a barber shop. No, that's my other uncle, Amos Bronson. How many uncles you got? 7, I think, but 4 of them live up in Camp Rosa, so I only see them at the reunion. And how many kids they got? They all got at least 3, but some of them have up to 7. That's too many. Ain't no such thing when it comes to family. More family just means more to love. But how do y'all keep track of each other? Same way as everybody else does, I suppose. Writing, keeping picture albums, swapping gossip, making memories when we can. And the local family sees one another every Sunday. Sounds busy. When do you see your family? I don't. How come? I don't like them. Well, what for? They had a lot of ideas about what I should be doing, I suppose. Which trade I should learn. How often I should be available for them. They broke the law a lot. Doing what? Nothing too big. Mostly moonshine. Sometimes even riskier stuff. Bonafide smugglers, huh? I wasn't proud of them. But if they knew me now, I guess they wouldn't be proud of me either. And I guess I was scared I'd go down with them one day. Think that they're in jail by now? Who knows if they're even alive? I wouldn't shed any tears for him. Lord knows that they wouldn't shed none for me. That's so sad. I think it's simple. And fair. I didn't agree to be born to those people. I just don't like to see a family neglecting one another. Family is supposed to help each other. If not to one another's dishes at the Sunday potluck, then at least when they're in trouble. Your family ever try to make you wash your mouth out with bleach if you swore? Of course not. And we don't swear to one another because we respect each other. That must have been nice. How often did your family visit the Greenes? I've been over there more times than I can remember. Since I was a baby, I reckon. I know Todd said he wanted to leave, but I make sure to turn over every shovel, every can, every piece of junk I can find. Todd just awkwardly stands by the door, looking out as if he won't leave until I go with him. When he figures out that I'm determined to be thorough, he sags a bit and starts helping me sort through the junk. After a decent while, we sort through more paint cans than I can count. I check under the slates in the floorboard. One of them goes back in quick-like when I see an angry-looking black scorpion skittering towards the direction of my arm. I wipe my brow with the back of my arm and keep looking. Todd looks at me, back with a wide stare. Find anything yet? He shakes his head. Well, we got just a few more things to look through. Do you know if Marcy owned the house before Huxley? Oh no, they've been together my whole life. You know, Miss Greene doesn't look that old. Well, it's rude to ask a lady her age, Mr. Ayers. So, you never did? No siree, Bob. Huh. You seem tense around women in general. No, I don't. You can't just tell somebody that they don't experience an observation, Todd. What I mean is that you tense up when it comes to asking even basic questions of a woman. But when you talked to me at the sheriff's office a few days ago, you got real personal. I didn't mean to. I just thought that you were used to hearing stuff like that from people. I'm not angry. I just think it's funny. And I just think that it's important to respect a woman, okay? There's all sorts of bad people out here who jump at the opportunity to dishonor them. People like Mr. Greene. Now, just wait a minute. I never said any of that now. You didn't seem very upset when you showed us Mr. Greene's body, though. You trying to imply something? Not much else besides you clearly didn't like him. Marks me as queer considering you knew him since you were a baby. Well, it can be hard to make a fuss over bad people when they kick the bucket. You think those rumors William was saying about Huxley were true? Probably worse, but I don't like to think about it. Miss Greene seemed happy enough, so I just helped when I could. She isn't so good with chores. I can see that. I just wanted you to know that most women aren't like Marcy. You treat them like special linens and they'll be off-put by the disrespect. If you're not willing to get a little personal with somebody once in a while, they'll think that you aren't interested. And if you're always more personal with men than women, well, you'll probably find yourself in the bed with a man sooner than with a woman. Now, don't you go making any presumptions about me, you hear? I don't think it's presumptuous to say most people get lonely. I could tell what you were doing in William's attic. You mentioned Mr. Tibbets before you did. I gotta ask an honest question if you'll humor me. Ain't nobody else out here, so fine. Were you thinking about some she-otter, or were you thinking about him? Neither, actually. Then who? Those thoughts ain't pure. The company you're in ain't exactly pure. Ah. You're definitely sleeping with Mr. Ayers then, ain't ya? I thought you knew. Well, I pretty much figured. It's just a lot to take in when I start to really think about it. I respect Mr. Adler a lot. He's sort of like another father to me. Sort of like one who tells you all sorts of stuff that you're not supposed to know. So what? So, it's kind of awkward picturing you doing things for him. He pauses, stammering a bit like he's trying to spit something out. Mostly because I know he's not supposed to. And also because I think it's easy to see why he'd want you to. Now there's a confession. I knew there was something funny about this one when I worked him up to spanking himself off at the sheriff's office. But something's putting him in an earnest mood. Maybe all the anxiety's loosened his tongue about. I heard before from Cynthia that otters get squeaky when they're scared and also when they're in a mood. Maybe Todd's the kind to mix those two emotions up. You saying I make you stiff, Mr. Bronson? Well, I try not to get stiff at all, Mr. Ayers. Thoughts lead to actions. And if I do something like that, I know I ain't ever getting into heaven unless I marry, and who knows if I'll ever have a chance. You really think all that's true? That's what my family taught me. How specific did they get? Mr. Ayers, nobody ever goes into details about things like that. So what you're saying is that you don't know how far is wrong. I think I have a pretty good idea. Seed's gotta go somewhere if it's not going in a wife, right? That's a violation of something that we call the law of chastity. But you finished in your paw before, right? His ears droop. I'm not proud of all that. Sometimes it comes out and you just can't help it. So you're already breaking the rules, ain't ya? That path to chastity is a road any man can walk, even after they stray. So why not stray and walk the path later? Mr. Ayers, there's plenty that you can do with another man that ain't quite close to christening your wedding bed. Sometimes it's just a matter of helping each other get the stuff out. How far could we go if I wanted to stop? As far as you want, if we're quick about it. I don't know if I feel right doing something like this in Marcy's shed. A few minutes ago, it sounded like you didn't want to do anything at all. There's that ottery smell in the air again. Pretty certain he does want to. Can it be outside? Out in the open? Feels less disrespectful to indulge in earthly pleasures out in nature. Plus, there's coverage behind the shed. And ain't nobody comes this way. You, really wanna do this? Do you? I am asking him and myself both the question at the same time. I don't know. Another steady customer seems too good to turn up. And we already know William is preoccupied in a different direction. How about I just give you a taste of the experience? We can do something quick and easy, and then you can visit me later. With money. Well, how quick is quick? Take your shirt off and follow me outside. We get to the back of the shed, and while it's not perfectly concealed, I still get the feeling that we're very much alone, and will be for a long time. After we start, no finishing. Well, why not? Because it has a smell to it. William don't need an explanation for that, does he? Because if he asks for the truth, I'm just gonna tell him. Oh God, no! Saying the Lord's name in vain already? I tisk. I touch him through his pants. He's stiff. Bigger than I thought he'd be, too. Then I give him a squeeze through the slacks. Keep these on if we're going to have to cover up quickly if somebody comes our way. Don't remind me. I set down a sheet covering a crate and lie it on the dirt. Now, lie on your back. He looks left and then looks right, then bends his knees, scooting backwards. His chest rises as he looks up at me. I sink down on my knees, looming over him. A twig snaps. We slide off one another like we're the opposite ends of a magnet. Fuck. I look around. I don't see nobody. I look at Todd, who's flailing with the ends of his belt like it's two heads of a fighting snake. I snatch my shirt off of a beam and toss it on myself and crouch behind a crate. He mouths, "Don't leave me!" And I try to mouth back, "You're just one person. It's fine." More pine needles crunch as we hear somebody coming back out of the bush. What's not surprising is that it's Marcy. But what is surprising is the blood running down her legs. And then we hear something splash on the ground. And that's where I'm gonna leave it for today. So, obviously it ended on a moment, and clearly there's something wrong with Marcy. I mean, aside from all the other abuse and trauma that she's already had to endure thanks to Huxley. But yeah, there is something very wrong. So this episode, well, this update, I guess, at least the first part that you already saw, is hinting that basically Huxley Greene abused her in both the physical probably and the mental, and the extent of how much she's been abused isn't revealed yet. You will see more of it in the next, part. But yeah, it's pretty bad, so I probably will have to put a content warning for this part, and especially the next part. But yeah. I'm also interested to see what connection Huxley Greene had to anyone, because, I mean, the attempted assassination of Clifford, at the very least, is a little weird because technically we know that Clifford from the other routes works with James. Well, not works with James, he works for James, or at least the CGCS. And the family, the Murdoch family, or at least what's his name? The White Fox. I forgot his name already, but the one that's gonna be marrying one of Murdoch's sisters also technically works for the CGCS. He's like a land surveyor. So I'm assuming that somebody, maybe one of the miners, maybe like the miners union, wants to get rid of Clifford, and maybe they might want to, try to get rid of the White Fox because they're working for the mines, their bosses, their bad bosses. So, anyways, so I guess we'll have to find out as William's story progresses, or perhaps even Murdoch's story progresses, or even technically Clifford's story. So it's all sort of interwoven because even though Clifford is all the way out in the Meseta Reservation in his route, he is still technically involved with what's going on. So, even Nick's route is all involved in the mines. So I suppose that's basically what all ties the story together, which is the mine. Anyways, so write down in the comments what you think is, what your thoughts are, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play the Smoke Room yourself, you can find it over on itch, and you can find a direct link to it from the Echo Project Twitter page, which will be linked down in the description, along with the Patreon for the Echo Project, which will give you early access to builds of the Smoke Room at Astra in Terra, Arches, Glory Hounds, and then the new story that's going to be coming out soon. And yeah. So, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.